So I'm here with an ex-professional footballer who played at the highest level in 4 different countries: England, Scotland, Switzerland and Austria. He then became assistant manager at St Mirren before moving on to being a football agent for players like Stephen Fletcher. Then moved on to become chief executive of the Scottish Football Association before finally moving on to become the director of football at Rangers Football Club. Today we're going to be talking about regenerative medicine and its benefits in sport. My name's Josh Wilson and I'm with Voice. Welcome to the show. So good, welcome to Voice.
Thank you.
First of all, so how did you get in contact with Voice originally?
Well, I first heard about what the guys were doing in terms of the partnership they had with the hospital in Thailand, and I realised that obviously the fact was that it's for mainly illnesses, and I wanted to find out a bit more about it to see whether there's people I know can be helped by it, and that's how I started, by making introductions in that respect. But during our discussions about what stem cell treatment does, I found out there's more to it in terms of other aspects of it, and one particular is the sports side aspect, whereby it can actually help people who have injuries in sport and improve those situations where there are real problems, ongoing problems with injuries that they've had. And the other thing was for regeneration of the body, so that they actually, they find that it actually makes them a lot healthier in terms of getting recovery from the sport they're involved in, getting the fact that they don't need to have more treatment, say, in some injuries they've got, and basically making them a lot younger in that respect in terms of continuation of their career. So I found that a very interesting aspect, and that's why it was something that I felt that I wanted to play a part in, not only for the illness and the medical side, but obviously for the sporting side too.
So you want to make it a more valuable thing within sport. Have you spoke to any kind of clubs, any other sporting, athletes throughout the world about these kind of things yet?
Yes, I'm already speaking to people in the football world about it and putting it, and they're very interested in it. They definitely did see there is something there to come from it. And I've spoken to people who are involved in the boxing world and also in the horse racing as well. I would imagine these people will be very interested. My next move will be to speaking to people in the rugby world, because that's also a sport whereby they have a lot of illnesses and should I say injuries, especially head injuries and upper body injuries that have to clear up before they can actually enjoy the sport, because there's no doubt there's a lot more physical contact in the likes of rugby than there is even in football.
Yeah, could you elaborate on the kind of benefits it would have with things like rugby and also mainly boxing as well?
Well, the main thing about it is, from the boxing point of view, I see there's two aspects to it. One is the people who are actually involved in the sport now. The current boxers obviously get injuries because it is quite an aggressive sport. It's a very physical sport. The second aspect is we know that a lot of the boxers suffer in retirement from injuries that have occurred during their boxing career. So that's another thing that you need to look at and say, this might be something that not only for those who are actually currently involved in the sport, but also those who have retired, and meaning they have a better life in general going forward, because a lot of these injuries can be sustained and cause problems for years to come. Same in any sport, I suppose. I know a lot of ex-footballers like myself who have had to have hip operations and knee operations because of injuries that have occurred during their football career. We're seeing the same for jockeys. Recently I was playing a game down in England at Cheltenham to try and raise funds for injured jockeys. So that is something that does happen there too, quite serious injuries that can happen from people who are riding horses in major races when they fall over and a horse tramples over them, that type of thing, as I say. So in most sports there's these two aspects of it. It's not only for those who are currently playing the sport and being involved in it, but certainly for those who are retiring and have had problems during their career in the sport, whatever they've been indulging in terms of saying something that sticks with them for the rest of their life.
So you said about like hip replacements and knee replacements. Can you highlight any disadvantages of these kind of surgeries and replacements?
Well, I think it does give a problem. Most of the time you see a lot of players, they get one hip replacement and then another. There's definitely something that can be done with it in knees. It means that obviously it curtails their movement for the rest of their life as well. Even some guys have problems playing golf and their retirement and doing things like that because of the recurring knee injuries and hip injuries. So if they could get proper treatment, get stem cell treatment while they're playing, or just before their career ends, it clears a lot of these things up and it actually takes the problem away from them. That's why it's crucial, because in many cases there'll be players who maybe have to retire in their 30s because of injuries that have occurred. And then if they get stem cell treatment, they can almost clear that up, and it means they can actually have a longer career and a more injury-free career.
Through obviously being able to turn the clock back and make players younger, can you highlight any benefits for clubs, for players themselves, or why they should probably get the stem cell therapy?
There's a lot of benefits in it. You know, you could have a situation where you got a football club who have a player who is a top player for them, getting into his maybe mid-30s, and he's not quite the player he was, and therefore well, they're going to have to replace him. Now, what happens a lot of the times is that there's two aspects to it. One is you have to replace him by someone you don't know if he's going to be as good as the player you're replacing. Second aspect is it might cost a lot of money to do that. Now, all of a sudden, if you have a player that you can rely on, you know what he does, and you can actually regenerate that player and make him fitter and basically to a degree younger in that respect, it makes a big difference, because you know then what you're spending the money on, and you know what you're going to get if this player is regenerated. So it's a big factor, money saving, and also making sure that you get the right player at the right time and he's fit again to continue within his career at that club. So I think that's why it's a major aspect for professional clubs to look at this.
Can you think of any examples?
Well, there's a lot of examples. My old club, Brighton, for example, two of the best players are two of the older players. There's Bruno, who plays right back, and he's still an outstanding player, but he's getting into his late 30s. And there's Glenn Murray, who's the striker there, who is a top scorer. He's been the top scorer for a few years now. He's getting towards 35, and he's another player. He still looks reasonably fit, but if you can actually even improve that fitness, that strength level, then he's a player that Brighton, could take advantage of and have him for a few more years yet. So they're always a good example. A couple of guys like that.
I remember you were saying that you're quite into your golf. So I'm going to ask you to explain the story of Tiger Woods.
Yeah, well, you look at Tiger Woods. I mean, he was a player who started playing golf as a youngster, practiced a lot, and had problems. And then, he's obviously had to have operations on his shoulders and things like that. Even he's had knee problems as well. And he's been getting these operations, been working very hard on his fitness levels. But most people said Tiger Woods was never going to compete again at the highest level. That was the common knowledge and the common opinion on it. And then he had stem cell treatment, and we can see the difference that's come from that. He's now won another major tournament, won the Masters as well, and I would believe he'll be competing going forward on that basis. So, as I say, we know then, when you see something like that, then you know that stem cell treatment is crucial and can have a major effect on an athlete and a sportsman's career.
There are plenty more like athletes about it as well, aren't there? Like Ronaldo, Nadal.
Yeah.
Have you got any more that come to mind?
No, these are the main ones that come to mind, I think, because these are the ones a lot of the times, and players, this is what you need to understand as well, players can, and sports people can keep it confidential. These people have been quite willing to say that they had the treatment, but a lot of the times sports people are getting the treatment and they're not saying anything about it. So, and even if I was told about it in a confidential manner, I wouldn't be allowed to say.
How well informed are you behind the science of stem cell therapy?
Well, I'm not a scientist, so to speak, but all I look for is you actually see the results of it. You know what I mean? So yeah, when you know that people like Cristiano Ronaldo, Rafael Nadal, and Tiger Woods have had it, then that gives you a great example of what it can do. Because I say Rafael Nadal was also someone who was written off anymore. He'd had a lot of injury problems. He just couldn't quite get his fitness, and they also said he wasn't going to be competing at the top anymore. And yet right now he is competing at the top. He's challenging and winning major tournaments again. So that's a good example of it. So I think that, without needing to know the science, what you're looking for is evidence of it, just to see where it works. As I say, not everyone will be coming forth and giving information on it, because a lot of it is confidential. But as I say, in any aspect of it that we see, the hospital are quite willing to say exactly what the results are without naming the names of the people who have had the treatment.
There are a lot of major players throughout the course of history or whatever that would have probably liked to have got stem cell therapy that haven't heard about it, aren't educated on it. Can you think of any kind of players that their careers ended, or maybe just weren't the same after their current injuries?
There are quite a few players, great players. I think Dutch Van Basten was a player who had to retire a bit early. A guy I know who was an ex-Rangers player, Ian Durant, he managed to revive his career, but he was not quite the same as he'd been because of the major knee injuries he had. Now, that's the kind of player that if it had been available then, he could have maybe had he should have had the stem cell treatment. It could have made a major difference. John Kennedy as well. Celtic, he's now a coach at Celtic, but he had to give up football early because of a bad injury. So there are loads of examples of it, players who have had these, and there's also examples of guys who, although they played on maybe with injuries, they weren't quite the same player anymore. It did affect them, and I think from that point of view you would have to say there'll be a lot of examples of it, you know, and currently there'll be a lot of examples of people who should find out that the stem cell treatment is there and actually you know, get access to it, because it can make a major difference to a sportsman's career.
From the research I did, Ian Durant spent was two or 3 years out before he came back to playing again.
That's right, he did. He had to have a few operations on it as well. He did well, maybe because he had the injury at such a young age, that helped him make a recovery on it, because you know, he recovered to a certain extent. They allowed him to play on. He did still have a decent career when he came back, but nobody thought he was quite the same as he had been before his injury, which was he was top class then. So if this could have been administered to him and given to him, and actually been able to recover, not two things, recover better and recover more quickly, then it could have made a major difference to him in his career. And that's it. There's loads of examples of that players who have had major injuries, who have come back from it, but as I say, they were not quite the same anymore. That injury never really goes away completely. It still hangs in there, and sometimes, you know, the muscles in the knee or wherever the injury is, has to be rebuilt, and it's not back to the way it was before the injury happened.
So that's why it should be a massive thing in sport. What about people like sportsmen or even clubs that you would speak to, and if they were like, you know, kind of borderline on the line, what would you say to them to kind of get them to potentially think about getting the treatment?
Well, the easiest thing is just to say is, like, you know, you've got to experiment on this, and you've got to look at it and see what it does. Do your research on it yourselves. I mean, what you're talking, you're asking me about the medical side, and I'm not good on the medical side of it because I'm not that way educated. But these people are, and it's very important that they do actually look at it, because if you're taking into account, you know, if a club doesn't do this for a player when other clubs are, and that player maybe finds out later on in his career that the club knew about stem cell treatment and didn't give him that opportunity, I think some players are going to be very angry about it, and there might even be legal cases in the end up if they don't actually give that opportunity for the player to have the stem cell treatment. So I think it's very important that every professional football club looks at this and sees exactly what the benefits would be in terms of looking at injuries and basically extending players' careers.
So how well into depth can you go about the future about stem cell therapy in sport?
I think it's massive. I think what people need to know, it's totally safe. It's not as if they're taking something which is illegal. It's stem cells are in the body anyway, and these are regenerating the stem cells. So that's the first key aspect of it. So I think it's major that the football clubs look at it, and I think once they start to do that, all you'll have to have is a few people, a few clubs doing it, and people beginning to see the benefits of it and the results of it, when everyone will want to get into it. I've no doubt about that this will be the way forward for football clubs.
Like elaborating on that, a lot of people would probably think, like, they hear a lot of like myths, you know, legends about these kind of things. So can you think of any myths you would have heard about it? That
I think a lot of people say that there's loads of research going into it. It's not quite what everyone says. That's always going to be out there. Not everyone's going to want to have you know, basically something, bringing in something they haven't actually put forward themselves. You know, this is something they've been told about, something which is not in this country yet as such. There's not stem cell treatment for athletes and for sports people here in this country, so you're going to have to go abroad to have it, but the people who have had it already have gone abroad to have it. And I think the main thing is that football clubs need to look at it, because, as I say, not just football clubs, sports people in general, all sorts of sports need to look at it, because I say it is the way ahead. And if you find that this is a perfectly safe way of actually improving people, taking away and clearing up injuries and improving and regenerating their bodies, then surely everyone is going to see it as an advantage to be in sport. Because if it does create an advantage, then it's a safe and 100% foolproof advantage that other people have to bring in too, because otherwise they're going to lose out, and they're going to find that their people who they're looking after are not going to be successful.
So what you're saying is basically other clubs that do get stem cell therapy and some that don't, when they play each other, one club could be at, you know, severe disadvantage.
Well, they could be. It's a question of whether the other clubs are at an advantage, because what they've done is they've taken on board the fact that this is a way of actually improving their players' health, fitness, basically running power, all these kind of things can come from it because of that. And the fact is that they maybe get players to play a bit longer who are key players for them, and that's a crucial aspect. So there will be an advantage in it for those that are actually using it. So ultimately then the club will see, each club will begin to see and find out what's happening, and then you might actually find out that players themselves will be coming to the clubs and maybe transfer to the club, and then be making an issue of the fact that they want to have the club allowing them to have stem cell treatment.
That's going to be the major thing, isn't it? When one player or one club adopts it as like care for themselves, then other clubs are going to start seeing the improvements they make, and potentially then it can spread through that.
The word will be out there, totally the word will come out there that this is a big factor in terms of making players fitter and healthier and regenerating their bodies is going to be crucial. And then once that word is out there, I can't see how any club, medical people, can possibly have an argument against saying this is the way forward, or that why aren't we doing this? Because they'll be getting players at their club maybe coming to sign for them who have already had stem cell treatment, and we're saying I want to make sure that if I require this, if I get any injuries, I want stem cell treatment.
What about being agents of players? Do you think they can get it put into their contracts?
I think it's a big factor, yes. I think agents could be looking at this and saying, if they see the benefit of it and they know that their players are going to play longer, the agents are going to be happier with that too, and the fact their players are going to maybe be fitter and play for longer. So they're maybe going to be of want to actually a clause in the contract to say that if the player gets an injury, the club have to make sure that they do look at sending the player for stem cell treatment for that injury. That could be a crucial factor, and the agents could play a big part in that, yes.
Definitely, it would definitely get the word out there, especially if players and clubs were to adopt it as a whole. But there are going to be a lot of sportsmen, athletes watching this. Would you have any advice for them about stem cell therapy?
My advice for them is just to say to look into it and see and find out more about it. Go to your medical people at your club first and foremost and ask them what they know about it, and do they have anything. And if they don't know anything about it, then I would make the point in saying, well, I'd like you to find out about it. If I was a player, I'd want my medical staff, physiotherapists, doctors to know more about it, because what you'd be saying to them is that what we're hearing is that this can be a big factor in helping repair injuries, also regenerating the body, making you fitter. So therefore, why would they not want to be looking at it? So I would say that any player who hears about this and is watching this should be going to their club and finding out if more can be done.
So in the future, do you plan on getting any stem cell therapy yourself? What?
I'm a bit like to maybe play a bit more football, but you never know. I don't know how good it is in that respect. If it got me playing at my age, then it would obviously have. I think everyone would want to get stem cell treatment. I can imagine all around the world they'd all want it. No, I would just like to see it regenerates your body in terms of for looking at for illnesses maybe that are already there, things that could happen later date. But you're also trying to make yourself healthier and fitter. And if I could get some stem cell treatment, I would definitely be going to get it.
It doesn't even always happen at like a later age. I've got arthritis in both my knees, and I'm only 21. It stopped me playing football. So
right, yeah.
I can get on out to Thailand and get that sorted as well.
Certainly, if it does help arthritis as well. I've heard that. I've gotten a little bit now in my fingers as well, so that might affect my golf. Time goes on, so that would help if I get some stem cell treatment. I might find my golf gets better.
Cool. Thank you very much, Gordon.
Pleasure. Thank you.
For any more information, go to www.voice.vip. Thanks for watching.